Na 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 Batman. Na 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 Batman. Batman, 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 Batman. Da-da-da, Batman. Hey guys, Steve-O here from Movies and TVs on the Ball. And I was just, this is a question I've asked, I wanted to ask my fans out there. Batman has been around since the 40s and 30s. And I was wondering, and with the recent The Batman coming out, I was wondering, what makes Batman's so unique is pretty much his villains that really bring something to Batman. We had in the 60s, we had Cesar Ramirez as the Joker, we had Eartha Kitt as Catwoman, we had the horse, horse, I can't remember his name, playing the Riddler, and and then I think as Batman has evolved from the '60s film, that's where I'm going to start. I know that Batman's been around since the '40s, but his rogues gallery in film has really started in the Batman movie from 1967 or '68, I think. I'm not really sure where, but on this video, I wanted to take a moment just to kind of rank the Batman villains in cinema. I'm not necessarily looking at Batman, the villains in the comics and animated show. So I won't, well, probably talk about Mark Hamill a little bit if you want to get technical with Batman Mask of the Phantasm. But I'm just looking at more of the live action Batman villains. This is going to be kind of um, looking at the Batman, mostly the villains in the movies. From looking at Jack Nicholson as the Joker, who is a little bit kind of the more gangster kind of Joker that we kind of got a little bit. What kind of was the blueprint that what evolved into Mark Hamill's Joker in Batman the animated series. But then we got sort of the, crazy psychotic Joker that was greatly done by uh, Heath Ledger. And then you have, and I like the fact that we kind of saw two versions of the Joker in in Heath Ledger's and and Jack Nicholson's Joker, how they're a little bit how they're different and similar at the same time. I mean, and then you have look at Danny DeVito's Penguin in Batman Returns, where he was more of the I guess in that film, Batman was um, Batman was the vice versa of Batman and vice versa between Batman and Penguin, both being into money and Penguin being tossed aside literally into the river and living with penguins in the Tim Burton Batman Returns, and that sort of difference between kind of how money can change people. But then you have sort of the gangster Penguin in kind of the mob boss type Penguin in Colin Farrell's version of the Penguin from the Batman, and how he was more of the which he was more of the sophisticated, um, gangster, sophisticated villain in a way. He was sort of, walked like a penguin. I saw a little bit of this is going with. I did see some episodes of Gotham, and Gotham dealt with kind of the penguin as being sort of a gangster, more of a gangster than anything, more than a gangster, more of a kind of mob boss type gangster in the Penguin in that series. But we got that with uh, Colin Farrell's Penguin, who's unrecognizable as the Penguin. Then you kind of had Catwoman, who I don't have. I don't mean I've got you know. I like to, or I have two versions of Catwoman on the screen, but I want to talk about three versions. You had Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, who was very. I kind of looked at her version of Catwoman as very kind of the thief, very sexualized in a way, just because of the way she kind of did her, um, her the way she created her outfit with like leather and with the whip. Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, Anne Hathaway did a pretty good job of making her sort of the jewel thief that we kind of see. But I also thought that she was kind of there was sort of a trying to undermine Bruce Wayne. But but I think that's the beauty, undermine Bruce Wayne, and then you had um uh Selena Kyle in The Batman, and she was more of that jewel thief kind of like the cat burglar, no pun intended, way of doing it. But I think they bring, if you look at, I think it's interesting looking at all three Catwomans, and we're not going to talk about Halle Berry's Catwoman because that's an entirely different category in itself. But you look at, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and she's very sexual. She's very promiscuous. She creates her own outfit. Then I think, and she's kind of got the jewel thief, but she's also got the jewel thief kind of feel to her. Then you had um, Selena Kyle in, we'll just kind of go year by year, in 2012's Batman The Dark Knight Rises. And she's more of, like I said, sophisticated and stuff like that. And then you had Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, and I like how she kind of plays it more as the thief in a way, and I like how they both brought something to it. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with Mr. Freeze. Speaking of Mr. Freeze in the Batman. But speaking of Mr. Freeze, let's talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. I've done a video on Mr. Freeze, kind of a real quick kind of talk about Mr. Freeze in the film, or in the animated show, and how he was totally rewritten as more of a sympathetic villain, which they kind of used a little bit as Mr. Freeze in the Batman and Robin, because he would spend time with his wife in the chronological Frozen Center. But what I liked about Mr. Freeze, I mean, if you look at Batman and Robin, he's more of the haha twirling villain. But then you look at the way Mr. Freeze is portrayed in Batman the Animated Series. You've got Batman the Animated Series. Um, you've got him sort of, there's more depth to him as a character, how his work, how I think Heart of Ice, which was the first introduction to Mister Freeze in the animated show, was written totally in a different background as a different story, because I think he showed up in Batman the 1960s film and in the 1960s show as sort of the I'm going to freeze everybody, that kind of thing. But there was more depth to him in Batman the animated series, where they really gave him sort of a more of a crushed soul in a way. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, as I said before, was I think was playing it more for comical in a way, but kind of the puns and stuff like that. But Suit was great, I have to admit. But you know, and then you've got the Riddler, um, played by Jim Carrey, and I think Jim Carrey played him pretty kind of over the top. But I did kind of like the Riddler in the. I like the just his suit and he how he basically used uh, like the box as sort of there was some sort of commentary somewhere in there with the box that he used to steal people's ideas and fantasies and stuff, and which was really interesting because if I kind of thought it was interesting looking at the Riddler in that, and then you saw the Riddler in uh, the Riddler in the Batman, and he was more kind of the psychic, kind of the Silence of the Lambs feel to him as the Riddler, and kind of that way where he was sort of like, um, I mean, look at him. He's got kind of like a weird mask and glasses and wore green. I thought he played him a little bit differently, than let's say Borscht or they did in the 60s, and even, but I think he's more cunning and more interesting in media, in the comics probably same way as voiced by John Glover in the Batman animated series. I thought he was more sophisticated and interesting. And then I mean, I kind of want to just mention that, but I liked that. And then you had Two Face, who I think had a really interesting Two Face in the Batman the anime, or Batman the Forever. Batman Forever had more of, he was a district attorney who gets stuff um, sprayed on him and gives him the face of Two Face, and I think it would worked pretty well with that in Joe Schumacher's version, but I feel like there was so much more depth in Batman the animated series that in Batman the animated series he was more uh, he losing the love of his life, Bruce having Bruce and uh, what's his name? Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent's relationship
Alert from reminders. Don't
friends
use data.
as friends as friends um and then they're going through about four, I think, two episodes, and then having his face completely burned off, becoming Two Face. And I think in the Batman the '60s show they tried to get Clint Eastwood to play him in the '60s show, but I don't think they kind of had the makeup to do it well enough. and I don't know how silly it would be if they did it that way. But I liked how he was done. I thought he was done really well. Tommy Lee Jones did a really good job of it. Poison Ivy. Um, I feel like Poison Ivy was in the Batman and Robin film. She was done really well. I mean, she was kind of femme fatale, playing with Mother Nature, and she kind of had sort of a, real, a little bit over the top, because, then you watch it on the Batman the Animated Series, and she's so much depth. But for me, I don't know how I'd rank all these Batman villains through cinema. I would probably say that the I'd probably have to say that Heath Ledger's Joker would probably be number one, followed by Jack Nicholson's Joker. I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan, so I would probably say Riddler would be my number three, just as a fan himself. But I did have to say that Colin Farrell as the Penguin was really done really well as well. And I also think that Bane, because I think Bane, speaking of Bane, who was more of a, let's end with that, Bane, who was a little bit more of, in the Batman Schumacher films, more of a brute, a henchman, if you will. And, but in the animated series, and I think in the Dark Knight Rises, there was more depth to him as well. He was more, kind of talk like that, but he had a lot more reverence and about social class, the rich, and but that was kind of the whole, Occupy Wall Street was going on after, during that time when Dark Knight Rises came out, so there was a little bit of commentary on that. But Bane, I think, felt more of like from a luchador kind of character that he was in Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. He was more of a cunning and more interesting. And Tom Hardy did a great job as Bane. But let me know what your rankings of the Batman villains in cinema. If you want, I would probably say the Phantasm is a really interesting villain as well. If you want to go with the Batman animated film, I think she did a. It was interesting, kind of him taking out all the gangsters in Gotham, and the Phantasm looks so cool, and just to see Batman the animated movie on the big screen must have been something special. But those are I would be talking. This kind of me ranking, starts rambling about the Batman villains in cinema or in modern cinema. Let me know who you like the best, the worst. Give me a top 10 list. Give me reasons why you like Jack Nicholson's Joker over um, Heath Ledger's Joker, or the weirdness between the two Riddlers or the three Catwomans. Let me know what your thoughts are on any of these. And as always, like and subscribe, and do Batman, Batman, peace, and see you at the movies. Bye.